All right. It looks like we're live, Aaron. How are you today?
Hey Sachin, how's it going?
It's going awesome, man. Actually, it's going really well. It's a beautiful day here. The humidity has left us, and we are enjoying, what summer has to offer. We had a great weekend and came off of seeing a lot of family, spending time with my brother and his family, saw my parents, my grandmother. So it was really a socially fulfilling weekend. And we actually just launched our accelerator program yesterday. So that was very professionally fulfilling as well, starting a cohort of about 50 or so practitioners on their journey for building their practice. So I would say I'm off to a good start this week. How about yourself?
Awesome. Same here. I've had some white space to do some around the house projects. There's nothing more fulfilling than changing your own flush valve on your toilet. So it's like this thing that was nagging at me because it would just keep filling and filling, and I had to figure out how to fix it. Either hire someone or look up how to do it. And I did it. It was pretty simple, and I use social media, YouTube, to learn how to do it. So I know we're going to be discussing how we can help others create their content calendar because other people are looking for our help. So I think that's the
Mhm.
coolest thing about what we do and what we're seeing in the accelerator, people realizing that their content's valuable, that their message is valuable. So
Right.
excited to
And
share how to do that today.
amazing, amazing. So was it like just a rubber gasket that you had to replace?
No, it was the entire flush valve. So the thing that fills the tank after you flush. So one of
Oh,
the
wow.
we got to notice, not one of the things that the city had told us is, well, that's one of the biggest wastes of water. Like the sources of wasted water in the
Mm,
residential area is that toilets that just keep filling. And it's really annoying because it sounds like something's leaking.
right.
And so that mechanism was broken, and I had to figure out what it was and how to do it. And it was very satisfying to do a little project like that. It's
You
a
know,
home improvement's a rabbit hole though, because once you start fixing one thing, you can see so many other opportunities to tweak or fix something else in the house.
what I love about that is actually reminds me of a very similar story where we had a gasket that was leaking, and so the toilet would slowly leak its water, and then it would kind of refill all the time, and it would be very intermittent. And finally, I had a plumber come over for a bigger job that we had to have done, and I say, hey, can you come here and take a look at this? He's like, yep. And he's like, I need to replace this gasket. I don't have it in the car. I do it for free, but I don't have it. And he's like, just call us back and we'll come back. I'll just charge you for the service charge. And I'm like, how much? He's like, $150 for for him to come out and put like literally a 99-cent gasket. So I did it myself, and it was literally a 30-second job. And I feel so proud for doing it, for actually fixing it. And every time I flush the toilet, there's like this little smile on my face because I'm like, hey, I fixed this. So there is definitely a certain level of pride of doing something ourselves and taking on these home projects. And as long as they're within our comfort zone, like sometimes if we get too far out of our comfort zone, it could turn into more than what we bargained for. But I find small projects like even painting a room, painted my office pretty recently. Like that was rewarding because it livens up the space and I had something to do with it. And it allows us to make something better and also benefit from it. We're used to, as practitioners, helping people be better, but we never get to benefit from that. But this is home improvements are things that we get to make better and benefit from ourselves.
I totally agree. It's so sometimes it's so hard being in the virtual world only. It's hard to feel progress.
Mm,
Even if you're doing a lot of stuff, you're on Zoom calls all day, you're working in a Google document, it's not the same as like starting something and seeing it physically created in the real world. So I kind of wanted to do those things because I knew that when I'm doing these things, sometimes my brain's working another way, and it helps everything else when I'm working in front of a computer. Oddly enough, it's like when you're in the shower and then ideas come to you as you're showering.
yeah.
I found that the more I sat in front of my computer, the less creative I actually was. So the work
Yeah.
offline helped the work online.
Yeah, when you're on a computer, it kind of brings up a good point, not to get too derailed from our conversation today, but when you're on a computer, you're more so a consumer. But when you're and you have to find that balance. The natural tendency is for us to consume, information from our computers and technology versus create. So we spend probably 80% consuming and 20% creating. Inside doing work, you're 100% creating, right? So in your mind, you're creating new ideas, but physically, you're also creating versus simply consuming. So I think shifting that state of our mind and how we're using our mental capacities also changes the potential outcome that we can create.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a good lead into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So today, what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually help our listeners with your help as well here, is creating a 30-day content calendar in 30 minutes or less. So, we've helped countless people do this, and I've got some new ways and ideas to hopefully get this message across to people so that they can start to benefit from this really simple strategy. So if you're tuned in today, we'll teach you in less than 30 minutes how to create 30 days of content in less than 30 minutes on your own. So I think, first and foremost, it's probably best if we start with why. Why is it important to have a 30-day calendar, and why is it important to continuously put your message out there? So I would say first and foremost, it's really about positioning ourselves in the marketplace as the sage. And the sage has kind of guide-like properties, mentor like properties that positions them in the marketplace as both an expert and as somebody who can create a profound shift and transformation for their ideal customer avatar. And so that requires us to be consistently putting our message out there, putting our thoughts, putting our ideas out there, helping people create micro transformations so that it engages them and makes them want to continue to work under our tutelage, whether they pay us or whether they, eventually know, like, and trust us and help promote us. Positioning ourselves as a sage as opposed to the hero is something that we can do through the content that we create. And what I would suggest to people is recognizing that the content that we're trying to create as practitioners should be education-based content. We should be educating our client because we have to almost help them unlearn their understanding of health and wellness if we're going to introduce a new paradigm. So as guides and as sages in the marketplace, we are able to guide them onto a new path and help them look at the world through a new lens. But that requires us educating them, because we're not trying to promote ourselves as being better than what they're currently doing as a healthcare strategy. We're trying to promote ourselves as being different. And that does require, kind of a educational route in order for that to happen. What are your thoughts on that, Aron? What have you found is an important rationale to be consistent with your message? Any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, when we shared this yesterday, there was a good question. What's the difference between, like, in the accelerator, you're talking about this in detail, and like, what's the difference between the thought leader versus a sage? And I thought that was such a helpful distinction, because if you're a practitioner, you're a doctor, you are in some ways, whether or not you realize it, maybe you're ingrained with the idea that you should know it all, right? That's becoming from the thought leader. Like, you're told you have to be a thought leader. So one of the things that I've seen and experienced is I have to share the right facts. So a thought leader is usually sharing something that's factual, and there's a lot of pressure to be right. And in health and medicine, it's so impossible to be right? We see that our knowledge about antidepressants and what it actually does to the brain and what depression is just got totally flipped on its head, even if that intuitively we knew that was something different. But we felt the pressure to be right all the time. And and when you brought this model of being a sage and rather being a guide, I wrote that quote down. You shared. It's experience is more powerful than information. And that was one of those things that stuck with me, because, like you said, if I can share my experience, people are learning from that experience and not looking to me and saying, oh, I'm looking for the right information. I think there's a place for that, in science and academia, but our role is not necessarily, unless you're a researcher, to be right all the time, right? That's a lot of pressure if you're thinking about a post and someone's going to find a flaw in your thinking or your data. So And being a sage actually takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, think of a vacation. Like, we'll use a very dramatic example here. If you went out on a vacation, you would come back and you would share your experience, right? What you may not know, or what may be somewhat questionable, is if I started asking you, oh, what kind of plane did you fly on? What kind of engine was it? Right?
Right.
How wide were your seats? Or what was the, circulation capacity of the plane? Like, I don't know. I start asking all these random information-based questions. Now, as you're sharing, what you could have been sharing was an awesome experience. It would have, engaged me and would have made me want to go on that same vacation as you. Now we're lost in the weeds of information, and it doesn't really get the message across. So as practitioners, I think that we love to learn information, and our job isn't necessarily to regurgitate that information, but it's to make it, is to actually put it through an experience in our life and then share that experience. So here's something I learned. Here's me doing it, or me using it, or me, leveraging it in some way. And here's what my experience has been. So sometimes it's important to share facts that are well established, but that's not what people are after. What they're after is, what's been your experience using this product that you're recommending, or this technique that you're suggesting, or what's been your experience, chewing your food more, whatever the case may be. Experience over information allows us to have more confidence and certainty in our message. It positions us as somebody who's speaking from experience, right? And we've all had experiences. We've all been through stuff that has helped us, and we've all been through stuff that hasn't helped us. And so it's not just about sharing the positive experience, it's also perhaps about sharing the not so positive experiences, so that you can help guide people, right? Like, so part of being a good guide is knowing what path to take, but also knowing what path not to take, right? What are the paths that lead people to a dead end? Yes, they can find out on their own, but that's not why they're hiring you, right? If you can prevent somebody from spending months or years at a time, or any amount of money on the wrong things, then that's valuable to them as well. So even when we are coaching clients, right, like, the first thing I tell them is, my job is to save you about 40 hours of time, right? So if I can save you 40 hours of time because I can make something be finished faster for you, or if I can save you 40 hours of time of you not doing the wrong thing for 40 hours, or 40 weeks or months in some cases, then you're going to recover your investment. So I think that for us, experience is something that we all have, and something that we need to get out there in the world.
Right. I think the purpose of creating content has to be, one of the ways I frame it in my mind is, with social media, I'm trying to help people see differently, or get to know me a little bit. It's not for me to convince them that their medication or their supplement regimen is wrong, or there's a right one, because that's what happens when someone's a client. I can share all that information, but the trust is there. So the social media content is really a way to build that know, like, and trust enough so that they want to have that conversation and then work with you. And then once someone is committed, that's when you can start talking about the data, the facts, sharing research. And I've had those conversations once someone's a client, but that's only after we learned to trust each other, and they're more receptive to it that way.
Right.
So that's what I found.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's important for us to also, as we're considering our message, why we're doing it, right? So we're doing it to help be of service to people. We're also being strategic as to how it's positioning us in the marketplace as somebody who can add value, somebody who shares experiences, somebody who helps people go down the right path, prevents people from going down the wrong path. And it's also a powerful way for us to, share with people what we stand for and what we stand against. We talked about that last week when we talked about branding. And so our messaging that we put into our content calendar should, be created with that in consideration, right? How is this going to position me in the consumer's eye? Which kind of brings us to the next point, which is, who is your message for, right? Now, our message can probably help a lot of people, but when we're trying to convey that message and get it across and help and getting it to land for that person, we have to keep that individual in mind, that single ideal customer avatar, your most perfect client, the person that thinks you charge too little, not that you charge too much, the person that values every minute that they get to spend with you, the person that looks forward to the appointments, the person that is a raving fan of yours and referring other people. You have to get crystal clear on who you want that customer to be, because that person is out there. And if they weren't, why would we, we wouldn't be looking. There's no way for us to look for them. That person does exist. And there's thousands of people just like them if we can get our messaging right. So good messaging is also identifying who your message is for, and also making it very clear to people if it's not for them. So I'll give you an example. My wife Deepa ran a challenge, and we had several thousand people sign up, and we were all excited. Numbers wise, things were looking very positive. And then by the end of it, she was a little bit frustrated because she's like, man, like people love the content. They're so grateful and they're so thankful. But at the end, when I present my offer, everyone complains about having a fixed income. And so we kind of reverse engineered that. I'm like, why does that keep coming up? Like, why is it that specific problem that keeps coming up over and over again? And why do these people like to share that, right? It's one thing to be in that situation. It's another thing to, publicly announce that you can't afford $100. So there's some trauma there that these people are struggling with. But then we said, it's going to be hard for us to fix that, right? We're not a financial, mindset management system, right? We're a health management system. And some people just have a broken relationship with money. So what we realized is that many of these people were older and they were on fixed incomes, and that kind of put them in a tough predicament where they couldn't benefit from taking those next steps. So we said, well, where is the mismatch in our marketing? Where is a mismatch in how we're delivering this? And we realized that we should have narrowed our audience and focused down more to perhaps women who are going through menopause, because they're usually working and they usually have more disposable income. They're at a stage in their life where they're frustrated enough and they can see if they don't make the right decisions, things are not going to go in the right way. So they're willing to do something about it. And by simply adding a few words, we can make it very clear as to who this message is for, which would keep out some of the older folks who may not be the right fit for us. And also the timing of the day of the presentation. So instead of having the presentations at 11 in the morning where, people who are at work are not available at that time, it's the people who are not at work or retired that might be available at that time. So we said, let's do something in the evening. So really understanding your audience is going to be very helpful in not just the content that you create, but also when you present the content, if you are creating video content or live content. And it'll also prevent the wrong people from kind of interfering with you putting your message out there. And, that leads to a lack of confidence sometimes, because when we're doing good work, if we're doing it for the wrong people, it's not going to land the way we expect it to. So know who your audience is and who it isn't when you're creating your content is another important thing for us to keep in mind.
I'm glad you brought up that story, because it reminds me that there's a lot of different ways to define who the audience is. Often in our space, we start to define like the condition, right? The problem. And I know once one of the side effects of focusing on a problem is you attract people who realize it's a problem, but sometimes they identify with that problem. Like one of those conditions is like fibromyalgia. There's a lot of people out there struggling with the label fibromyalgia, but sometimes it comes across that they are fibromyalgia. And that's a very challenging case type of patient or client from my experience to work with, because they've identified with it. But then you start to think about the different psychographics, the qualities of the people you like working with. So the contrast to two, there's people who are coachable, people who have a positive attitude, people who are willing to like learn and grow. Like those are the things that I like. The people I like working with often have those qualities. It's not that I intended to attract those people, but I found that, those are the qualities I like. So you can start to demonstrate those. I think there's ways to do it. You can demonstrate that you are positive, and you'll attract positive people. And then the language we use can also repel or attract those types of people. So I thought it's just a subtle insight, like a tweak to the messaging that can have a big effect on your quality of life and satisfaction working with people.
Yeah. And I just want to be clear about this. Like if we, um, if we are looking to help people who are on a fixed income or who are retired and maybe on a budget, then there is absolutely nothing we should, right? Like we want to help those type of individuals. We just have to make sure that we're not leaving out our ideal customer avatar from the equation, because we're not directly communicating to them and getting them to say, hey, this is for me, right? This was designed for me. So I just wanted to point that out as a clarification.
Right.
You could create a challenge, how to get healthy on a budget, right? That could be a challenge that you do, and you attract people who are on a very tight or limited budget, and you create an offer that's designed for that individual. So they feel like, wow, this was specifically designed for me. They can't say I'm on a fixed budget as an excuse, because that's exactly who this program is for. It's for people who are in that exact situation, right? So now they feel like that's for me. And then here's the interesting thing is like that same $99, if that's what the offer is going to feel and land differently for that person, because they know that you've tried to pack as much value in it and it's designed specifically with them in mind. And your promise to them could be, hey, you're going to save more than $99 or $97 by using this information. You might even save it within the next 30 days, if not sooner than that. By the next time you go shopping, you'll save that money.
Right.
All right. So what do you post, right? That's the $1 million question. So it's great to know how to position yourself. It's great to know to post information that relates to your experiences. It's great to know who your audience is. But then what do you post, right? So I've always recommended to people that you are your own ideal customer avatar. If you can become, or if you can recognize that, then what you have is a ton of experience solving your own problems for people just like you. And you already know what that person is thinking on a daily basis, right? What inspired you to get healthy? What were the obstacles that you came across? What were the challenges? What were the trainings that you took? What were the supplements that you used, or the lab tests that you did? Or what are the lifestyle changes that you made? You can speak specifically to that problem. So for myself, I can get very specific. I can speak to entrepreneurs who are parents, who run online businesses, right? Like I could get, that specific if I wanted to, and we can peel back the layers a little bit more if we need to as well. So what do you post is going to be related to once you get first getting a clear understanding of who your customer is, and then if you are your ideal customer, what's relevant to you? What do you do on a daily basis? So what I would say is you just relive your day for the next 5 minutes and just take a picture of what happens when you first wake up in the morning, right? What's on your nightstand? Maybe you have a salt lamp or something. Maybe you have a gratitude journal that you write in. Maybe there's a morning ritual that you do as soon as your feet hit the ground. Maybe you do some breath work in the morning, right? Then maybe you brush your teeth, right? What's your oral routine in the morning look like? Right? If you're using the bathroom or using a squatty potty, there's another post. There's some content right there. So within the first 3 to 4 minutes, you can of your day, you're already creating content. This is stuff that you probably weren't doing when you were in high school or university, or even as even 5 years ago. So what are some of the things that you've been doing over the last few years that you've incorporated that you are consistently doing because they're of benefit to you? And you've probably done some research on how to optimize this behavior. And that's of value to people who are just like you, who are busy, who may not have the time, who may not have the resources to dig around on the internet and dig around through the books and podcasts and products that they've tried in the past, things that have failed and not worked. And now you've concluded that this is what works. So sharing that can be very valuable. So I invite you, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, you can pause it or just keep listening and go around your house and relive your morning and recount not just what you're doing, but also the thoughts that you're having. And also think about what are the things that you were doing before that you're no longer doing, right? What's the first thing you drink in the morning? Why? What kind of coffee do you drink if you drink coffee? What do you add to your coffee? I'd be interested in knowing that, right? What are some of the superfoods that you're putting in there if you're adding stuff to it? What's your morning exercise routine like? Do you go for a walk? How do you manage movement throughout the day? So you can start thinking about all the things that you weren't doing that you're doing now on a consistent basis because they make your life better. And guess what? What you take for granted today, you didn't even know just a few years ago. And guess what? Your audience member who's, where you were 3 to 5 years ago, they don't know this either. And we don't want it to take them 5 years to figure this out like it took you 5 years to figure this out. We can help them figure this out in 5 minutes a day of content that we create. So we have plenty of things that we can, pull from our daily lives. And there's plenty of lessons that we've learned along the way. And that journey of ours that we've gone through and that day-to-day life that we have right now is adequate amounts of content, if not beyond adequate amounts of content for us to create. And easily you should be able to create 50 to 100 pieces of content just from your daily routine, just from the things that you do unconsciously on a daily basis, the stuff that's in your fridge, supplements in your cabinet, the air purifier in your bedroom. Like there's all these things that I know I do that I'm sure many of us do that we could start sharing and helping people. And some of these things we can monetize if we're affiliates with these product companies. And some of these things are purely educational. So there could be a mix of affiliate commissions that you can earn by sharing this content, and then also being of service and helping people, because oftentimes they can get discounts on these products. So go through your house and figure out what are the products that I use on a consistent basis that are helpful for me, that I wish somebody had told me when I was starting this journey.
That's one thing I've seen you do really well. When you find something you like, you connect with the person who created it, and then you turn that into content. So it happens all the time, and that's how I know I learn a lot of new stuff. We learn about what's it called, the ultra magnesium, Barton Scott
upgraded magnesium.
Yeah, upgraded magnesium, and and I wouldn't have learned about it unless you had shared it. And you go down the rabbit hole, and then you bring others along with you. That's what I'm imagining, because I think a lot of us like to learn, and we all go down the rabbit hole. It just takes that extra step to share that experience of it. Right.
That's a great point. So when I'm learning new things, I always keep my community in mind. Just like when you're learning new things, you should, because my community is people just like me. They're practitioners who want to make the world a better place. So if I find it valuable, yes, they may eventually stumble across it, but why not share it forward? Why not pay it forward and share my experience with the product? And I didn't introduce the product to anyone until I experienced it for myself. So I noticed an improvement in my deep sleep scores on my Oura Ring. And I said, wow, more people need this. So let me continue using this product and see if it has lasting benefits, which it did. And then I introduced it to the rest of our community. So you may not know all the founders of certain companies. That's okay. You can share your experience with the product. Now, I didn't get into all the information related to magnesium. I just shared an experience. I shared, here's what I took, here's what the results are, and then here's an expert that can help us understand why this is happening. But, I'm not getting into the weeds with magnesium, right? I'm just sharing an experience, and then other people are leaning in because they're interested in wanting to experience the same thing.
So should we get into the how, maybe some ideas for okay, now that you have the idea, what do you actually create your post about? How do you structure it? Where do you share it? How do you collect ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple of things. One, the strategy that I recommend is just reliving your day, right? And what we want to do with our message is we want to structure it. So there's a few things that you want to take into consideration when you're structuring a message. Your message should create clarity for your potential consumer. And sometimes clarity means this is for you. Sometimes clarity means that this isn't for you. So we should never be afraid of being clear with individuals. One of the things that we should be mindful of and fearful of is wasting people's time. Because if your messaging is not clear, it could take somebody down a rabbit hole only for them to find out that you can't help them, right? So let's say you specialize in a certain, or you specialize in a certain type of patient, but your messaging isn't clear, and somebody who with a similar sounding problem or, similar health challenges reaches out to you only to realize and follow you and consume your content only to figure out that you can't help them. So we want to be very clear with who we help and also who we don't help. So I get people, who will say, hey, I love your content, but I am not a functional medicine practitioner. Is this something that you can help me with? Right? Because they're not assuming that I can help them. They're assuming that I can't because of our focus on helping functional medicine practitioners. So be very clear who your message is for. Some of our programs are for people between 0 and 100K. Some of our programs are for people with 100K revenue and above. So, be clear in your message who, your programs are for, who your message is for as an example. So transparency is going to be very important. There's also a structure that I borrow from my friend Jennifer Hootie from Conscious Copy, and it's the 5 C's. So anytime you're writing content, whether it's on social media or whether it's on, an email, you want to keep these 5 C's in mind. So these 5 C's, number 1 is capture attention. So if you're sending an email, how do you capture somebody's attention? Well, it's the subject line. That's the first thing that they see. They see your name and the subject line. So your name hopefully should excite people when they see it in their inbox. And your subject line should be clear. We like to think of subject lines like a label because it's easier for us to search for them if we're looking for them. We don't want our subject lines to be cute or misleading or clickbaity, because guess what happens? If somebody feels clickbaited, you might get that awesome open rate, but then your following emails are not going to be opened as much because people are automatically, they don't want to open up a can of worms. They want to know exactly what they're pressing when they open up your email. So being very clear, capturing their attention. I like a little hack where you can add emojis into the subject line because that'll make your subject line pop out in people's inboxes. So you can put a heart or you can put an emoji that's relevant to the subject line that would grab people's immediate attention. Okay. Next thing when you're creating content is you want to ask yourself, how can I repurpose this content? So we capture people's attention as the first C. And we want to think about, as we're creating this content, is this something I can use in email and social media? How can I use this message as broadly as possible? Okay. So getting people's attention on social media is going to be using images. Images, the brain processes images faster than it processes words. So on social media, you might have to use an image that stops people from scrolling. Okay. So the first C is capturing people's attention. The next C is to create interest. You create interest by telling stories. When somebody says, let me tell you a story about when, you automatically, as a human being, lean in. Okay. It's a natural tendency for us to do that. So we create more interest in this topic by telling a story about the subject that we're discussing. Next is to clarify the benefits. What are the benefits of this information to this individual? Why should they care about this information? Next, C is create credibility. So we want to create credibility for ourselves. Why should they care what we have to say? Maybe it's our experience, maybe it's our training, maybe it's something that happened to us that is allowing us to be credible to share this information with them. And the last C in our content is a call to action. So what is the next step for them? It might be subscribe, it might be click on this link, it might be join this program, depending on where they are on their journey. So all of our content should have encompass these 5 C's: capture people's attention, okay, using images, emojis, clear subject lines. Next C is to create interest by telling stories and case studies. Next C is to clarify the benefits. So why should they care? Next C is for us to stand in our credibility. Why should they care what we have to say about this topic? And the last C is a call to action. You want to train your community to respond, right? So if you want comments, you tell them to comment below. If you want them to tag someone, tell them to tag someone. If you want them to share their favorite meme about the topic, you give them very specific directions about this individual, call to action, so that they are then being trained in a way to follow your direction. Right? We don't want them to, pay us and then follow our instructions. We want to get them following our instructions from the very beginning, because our instructions are going to be helpful for them to become successful, right? Our call to action is laying down the steps of success for this individual to go through an ideal customer or client journey with you. And then, what we also encourage you to do in terms of how is where are you going to collect all this information, right? So, Aaron, I know you like notes in app as an Apple user. You can also use Google Docs. Google Docs is something that is a living document that can exist on your phone or computer or any other device that you use. And you can start collecting your ideas in there. What I invite you to do right now, if you're listening to this, if you haven't already done so, is go around your house, take a picture of what the stuff that's on your desk. It's there for a reason. Take a picture of the stuff that's in your pantry. It's there for a reason. Take a picture of your bathroom countertop. Every single thing that you have there is there for a reason. Take a picture of your supplement cabinet. Everything in there has a purpose, and start sharing, your experience as part of your content strategy. Educate people, educate them on why you do these things. And guess what? They're going to start doing them. They're going to start following you. They're going to start feeling better. And you're going to become their new favorite guide on their journey towards health. And then when the time is right, when they reach a plateau and they realize, okay, I've come as far as I can come on my own, now they need a guide, right? So let's get them to base camp, right? Anyone can go to base camp at Everest. You can go visit and leave. But if you came there to go up the mountain, right, we need to at least get people there. We can't get them from their couch to the top of the mountain. We need to get them from their couch to base camp. So then we can give them that option to go the rest of the way. So it's the success path that we lay out in front of them through the calls to action that we have that allows them to experience that. And of course, naturally, the question that comes up is, when do I post? How often do I share my content? When do I get started? And the answer is right now, right? As soon as possible, right? Start creating, this awareness of you having this profound knowledge. Start going through your home and generating some ideas for your next 30 days of content. You can post on social media every day. You can take those posts, put them into a Google document, massage them into emails by making a few simple changes. And now you can create a whole email sequence that people can go through with 30 or 50 or 60 of your best tips. And now you've got a nurture sequence that educates people along the way as they get to know you a little bit better. So there's lots of ways that you can take this content and repurpose it and make it valuable. I guess the first step is simply getting started.
Right. I think the one of the key ideas that I've learned is, don't assume you're going to remember. You either do it right now or capture it somewhere. Because I know I've gotten a lot of ideas, and then when I think I'm going to do it later, I forget about it. Like, it's just gone forever. I'm like, I knew I had something there, but now it vanished into the ether.
Yeah, it's so true. And sometimes you're like, I swear I'm going to remember this, and then you don't. I don't know if that ever happens to you.
That's why I have the system now. It's like, if I remember it, I have my phone or my Remarkable right there. I just note the headline, and just so I have a prompt later.
Yeah, because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna forget this. Like, this is such a great idea. There's no way I'm gonna forget this. And then I'm like, I even remember telling myself I'm not gonna forget this, and then you end up the thought escapes you. You're just like, oh my god.
Yeah, the 2 seconds put in up front saves a lot of pain later. I'm all about solving the pain ahead of time. That's my philosophy.
Smart man.
So what's the next steps for folks listening?
Well, if you're enjoying this content, if you're enjoying our conversations, you're finding them helpful, please subscribe to our channel. We want to make sure that you see our videos that we create for you, and that you're getting the information put in front of you, because we try to add as much value weekly as we can. I also invite you to get my book, Perfect Practice. You can go to getperfectpractice.com. It's full of amazing insights, about 140 pages, written for busy functional medicine practitioners. And there's lots of great nuggets in there for you. It's absolutely free. Just cover the shipping and we'll ship it right out. Next, I invite you to join our podcast. So we also have a podcast called Perfect Practice. And what we do is we take our best episodes and some of our guest speakers. We've got over 100 episodes in there now. And you can go back and listen to it right from the beginning if you want, or join us listening to our latest episodes. They only get better with time. And then also, I invite you to join us for our business intensive. We have a business intensive that we do usually 3 times a year. Check out the dates for our next coming intensive. It's 3 days packed with the step-by-step process and roadmap to build your business. And then, I also advise you to see if working with our community is right for you. We mentor several hundred practitioners and we take them on a journey to build their perfect practice, optimize themselves personally, professionally, and also with their practices. It's a great, great community. And if you're the right fit, it's like an amazing opportunity to connect with like-minded people who are on a similar journey. So lots of things that you can do to keep moving forward, keep spreading your message, keep learning from others. And like I said, we have an awesome community that is here and ready to support you. And you can also set up a time with a clarity advisor who can guide you through the next steps. We have lots of resources that can support you. So as always, thank you, Aron, for joining me today. Any words you want to share? What were your biggest takeaways from today?
The biggest takeaway is we have everything we need to create great content. It's just a matter of creating a process or being intentional about it. And we have a lot of value to share. Appreciate
Awesome.
it, Sachin.
Great
See you next
takeaways.
week.
So